All right. Hey, so good morning. It's still a couple minutes in the morning. I just wanted to welcome folks and say thank you for welcoming me here to Utah. My name is Col Winter. I'm representing the national headquarters, but I actually live in Washington, D.C. I'm an Air Force officer, active duty, and I get to command a squadron. And I know there's a lot of cadets in the room, so we fly A-10s. We've got some A-10 lovers. I'd love to chat with you. But we're also the only Air Force unit in the United States Air Force that has a full spectrum cyber operations unit. So we've got 2 squadrons that do offensive cyber. We've got a squadron that does defensive cyber stuff. We've got a squadron that takes care of cyber intel. So cool opportunities for us to work with our partners around the world, doing some great stuff in cyber. And ever important in the last, see what we have to almost 2 months with the conflict overseas. So, but I'm not here to talk about that as much as I'd love to. We can talk about that at lunch or during the rest of the day. What I'm here to talk a little bit about is Civil Air Patrol's education and training program. And I'm hesitant to say that it's new because we're 2 years into it, but it's new because COVID kind of screwed things up and slowed our opportunity to engage a little bit more. But I know there's a lot of cadets in the room, so I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about what the program is going to do to support you in the cadet program. But more importantly, the focus really is on our adult members and our senior members in the room as they progress through it. Just like all new cadets progress through the cadet program, a lot of your adult mentors, they progress through the program as well. And that's really what the education and training is all about. So let me just, before I kind of dig into it, I'm going to spend most of my time talking about Volunteer University. We really have 4 areas that we focus in on Civil Air Patrol education and training. The mentoring program, which cadets, you know all about mentoring, but it's really important on the adult side as well, especially for our newest adult members, to team up with somebody who's a little more advanced, a little more experienced in Civil Air Patrol. We have a program called Continuing Education, which I'll talk more about here in a second, but continuing education really is that chance to create and to invest in our adult members in what we call lifelong learning through Civil Air Patrol. So when they get done with levels 1 through 5, or if they decide, hey, I just want to take care and finish and check out after level 2, this is going to give our adult members to stay engaged in what's happening in Civil Air Patrol and what we value in the organization. And then the last is our specialty tracks, which cadets I'm going to tease a little bit because we're thinking about letting you all, the National Cadet Advisory Council, really wants to spearhead this initiative to allow senior members, as you are a little more senior in your cadet experience, for you to start engaging in specialty tracks along with your senior members in your squadron and things of the like. So, like I said, let me talk a little bit about mentoring first. And I stole this photo. I think maybe you might recognize some of those folks in that photo. But the reality is, right, mentoring is all about having interaction with folks, right? It's about having a chance to, again, get to know folks and also learn and yearn that experience from other folks around you. And there's a mentoring assignment process that we go through. Right now, there's about 200 mentors and mentees that are paired up throughout Civil Air Patrol. So you've got folks who perhaps are, on the East Coast and some folks on the West Coast, and they're meeting virtually and through the telephone world, getting to learn and know a bit about each other. It's a pretty aggressive program for the mentor process, right? We want to make sure that they have the tools and resources to be successful in that. But then there's also the cadet mentoring program, which I teased a little bit. So the Spots Association and my team are working really closely together to create a path for those who are members of the Spots Association to continue to mentor all of you young cadets to ultimately, hopefully, take a consideration to become a Spots cadet. So a really cool opportunity there. They've got some great publications that they've done. One of the other neat things that they're doing for our senior members in the room is a leadership development series, and it's a pilot program. And I choose the term pilot program just as we're really about our first year through it, where previously, if I wanted to learn what it was like to be a wing commander, I'd have to wait until once a year, and I'd have to go to the national conference, I'd pay money to get there, and I'd have somebody that stand up in front of the room and say, hey, this is what it's like to be a Civil Air Patrol wing commander, and it was more or less a panel. And it was one year occurrence, and really we felt like that wasn't enough. So we've created a program now that runs multiple times throughout the year. It's in the virtual space, where our senior members can learn what it's like for folks like Colonel Hess and myself, our previous wing commander, to figure out what do I want to become a wing commander? What tips and tools and skills do I need to be successful as a Civil Air Patrol wing commander? So the other program, like I mentioned a little bit about, is the ability for us to have a continuing education program. And there's really kind of 4 focus areas. The first being a speaker series. So think about TED Talks, right? We've got some great speakers out in Celebritral. We've got great speakers in industry, great speakers out in corporate America that we've partnered with that are going to host like interview style type question and answer period for our Celebritral members to continue to develop as leaders in Celebritral. We also have the opportunity to have a leadership book review. So kind of think of like a leadership book club for adults and cadets where you're going to be invited to participate in this. It's going to be grade and rank specific. So we're, the hope there is that you get to learn a little more along your leadership journey, but then you get to meet people in small groups to be able to talk about, hey, what did I learn in this particular book, or what did I learn in this particular exercise? We also are responsible for training all of our region and wing commanders. So annually, your wing commander gets to do what they call continuing education, right? So even as a wing commander, every year, right before the national conference, they get together and they learn a little more about some of the current skills to be a Celebritral wing commander. And then they do a week-long program down at Maxwell Air Force Base where they, right after or right before they become a wing commander, they go through a pretty intense week-long session about what the do's and don'ts to be successful in running a Celebritral wing. And then we have a certificate program. So this is one of the things I'm really excited about. Same thing, cadets in here, we're going to invite you to also participate in this. So there's things in Celebritral that we value, and things that happen in Celebritral that I would say just happen to come up, right? One of them being cyber hygiene, right? We value that we're really good in the cyber world, so we want to make sure you have good cyber hygiene skills, right? What to do, how not to share passwords, what's a good password. So imagine the opportunity for you to get perhaps, and I'm just throwing this term out there, it's not fully approved yet, but you might get a silver level in a cyber hygiene course right after attending a couple of virtual Axis, which is our learning management system courses. We'll ultimately, continue on to get maybe the bronze certificate in cyber hygiene. Same thing, diversity, equity, inclusion. We value that as an organization as part of our core values with respect. So, there'll be a chance perhaps for us to get a certificate program in the DE and I space. So again, something unique about that. But really what I want to focus on before we go into volunteer university is specialty tracks. So this is a little bit of a busy chart, a little snake chart thing. I don't want you to pay too much attention to that just yet, but our specialty tracks are old, right? The material that's in them are not necessarily current, and we're working on that. And I share with you that while it's an integral part for the adults in the room as part of our professional development program, what we call our professional development program, that's a legacy term, you have to do a specialty track in order to progress through Celebritral. Well, we realize that a lot of the material that's in there is a little bit outdated, right? The minute we publish a Celebritral regulation, guess what happens the next day? Probably out of date, right? Or there's a picture or something we changed or something like that. So what we envision with specialty tracks is the chance that when the membership joins into a particular specialty track, that it's going to be more continuing education credit based rather than, hey, here's a book, go study it, learn it, and then forget about it. What we envision is you're going to have a bit of a core competency, right? So you might learn a couple, hey, here's 3 or 4 lessons that you have to go through, and then maybe annually National Headquarters will sponsor you for an hour or 2 to learn a little more about what it means to be an aerospace education officer, or what it means to be an aircraft operations officer, things of the like. And the cool thing about specialty tracks is we're going to use that same platform that we use now for what we call the professional levels in these services, which everything's going to talk to each other, right? So gone will be the days of all the crazy paperwork that everyone has to sign off on and things like that. And the really cool thing about specialty tracks, which I appreciate, is that we're going to value the experience that you bring from your day-to-day life in Celebritral. So if you're a certified public accountant, for example, the team will look at that and it'll validate that, hey, you're a CPA. So guess what? Maybe you should be a technician rating in the finance specialty track. So again, we're going to value those skills that you bring to Celebritral, so get rid of some of that bureaucratic world that takes place. But the other unique thing about specialty tracks is, right, as you look through specialty tracks, if I'm an aerospace education officer, one of the things that I have to do is give a public presentation. Well, guess what? If I'm a cadet programs officer, one of the things I have to do as part of the technician in the cadet programs world is I have to give a public presentation. Why do I have to do it twice? What I'm trying to say is the program now is going to allow you to get credit in both specialty tracks, even if you're not enrolled in that specialty track. again, taking some of that bureaucratic process out of it to make it better. So specialty tracks, it's a huge lift. There's a lot of work that's going to go into specialty tracks. Right now, we're at the process where all the national headquarters smart folks are simply editing the current specialty tracks to make sure that the language matches what the current regulation says. So, for example, if it says CAP Regulation 39-1, well, does that exist anymore? Well, no, let's change what that regulation might be and make it up-to-date. But like I promised, we're going to spend most of my time and probably about 15 minutes or so, 10 minutes, and he's going to tackle me. I told him because I'm standing between you and lunch. I didn't remember you're going to tackle me. He's already shaking his head. Is volunteer university. So I'm going to fly through these next couple slides. So volunteer university. So when volunteer university was pushed out, what happened next, like I teased a second ago, COVID. And unfortunately, we were pushed to go mostly all online throughout the United States. And volunteer university was not an exception to that rule. So that was a challenge for me. So I was the first provost of Solera Shoals Volunteer University, and I had to all of a sudden pivot from training folks face-to-face to only training folks online and being able to execute the program online only. While we always anticipated that volunteer university was going to be afforded to our members online, that was not the only way. We thought probably 10 to 20% of our membership would learn about Solera Shoals Senior Member Program online. Well, what happened? 100% of you had to learn what Solera Shoals was all about using that online space. So what ended up happening besides the online space is we created really the field and vision. Well, guess what? We don't want to necessarily do everything online. Let's do something virtual in residence, where we can use things like Teams, we can use things like Zoom, just like a lot of you did when you went to school every day. We did that same thing. We took that same approach from the national headquarters level, and we created that virtual and residence space, which I'll talk about. Online, again, was cohort-based. What's a cohort? So a cohort, think of a cohort as a group of people, anywhere from 10 to 25 people, 1 to 4 instructors, where we create these small learning networks for folks to bounce ideas off of each other, but also progress through. Right? The ideal timeline, depending upon the level, is we say in 1 year you'll accomplish level 1, level 2, level 3, not level 1. One takes about 1 day. Level 2, 3, and 4, we give you a year, and that's just an artificial timeline. Some cohorts move faster as an individual. The nice thing about that last bullet point says you can bounce in between all 3 modalities. Right? So if I'm sitting here today and I went to a presentation by the Utah National Guard, I learned a little bit about strategic operations. Guess what? An education training officer might be able to say, yep, he accomplished or she accomplished that, and that's part of level 5. But I also have to do these other things in level 5, so maybe I'll do one face-to-face again, maybe I'll do one online, maybe I'll do one virtual in residence. So it gives you flexibility as a member to bounce in between those 3 modalities to be successful. So level education. So when I want you to think about volunteer university and level education is really at the high level. How are you a good leader? Right? What are some of the tools that we can provide for you to be a good leader? Whereas specialty tracks, like we mentioned, is very tactical based. What does it mean to be an aircraft maintenance officer? What does it mean to do this? Those types of components. We also have electives. So electives are where we value to train our commanders. So squadron commanders, group commanders, if your wing particularly has a group, some of our larger wings certainly have groups. But then also region command, right? What it means to be as part of the region staff or region command level. And then we have a pretty robust onboarding process for our instructors. So we put them through a very quick application process. Anytime you want to join the national headquarters team, you have to apply, and the same approach takes place. We ask our instructors to apply to be an instructor. They go through a very quick validation process, usually 1 week, and then it goes out for command to say yes or no to this individual to be an instructor. We think the right model should be 1 or 2 instructors per squadron, right? And I think Utah is doing fairly well with your numbers in terms of where that is. Right? Yeah, right. You're okay, so we'll do a picture in a minute. All right. So, again, real quickly. So, what's courses and what's some of the terminology that we use? So, back then, you'd show up at something called Squadron Leadership School or Corporate Learning Course or National Staff College, and they may hand you a binder, and you feel overwhelmed. Oh, by the way, you had to take a full weekend off. You probably had to travel to the other side of Utah. It cost you money. You had to spend the night. You had to pay for your own food, things of the like. What we've decided then is that's a then story of this huge textbook to a now story, which is like chapters. Now I can take a little bit of a bite out of that big textbook and do it at my own pace, which is another term for modules. Two kinds of modules, automated and moderated, right? So automated basically means that I can sit at my computer, much like level one, do all the level one material at my own pace, get instant feedback, because I'm going to do maybe a knowledge check or two, and then I'm going to be complete with it. I'm going to be complete with that particular module. Whereas a moderated module is a little bit of interaction with a faculty member, with an instructor that says, yes, this is what you learned, let me just ask you a couple questions, or maybe there's a little assignment that we ask you to do. You do that assignment, the instructor validates that you've done the assignment, they identify that you're good to go with that particular module. Make sense? Still with me? I'm just thinking about lunch. Okay, so synchronous and asynchronous. We learned all sorts about this through COVID, but I feel like somebody took a picture of me when I was a kid right here. I had glasses too. So synchronous learning, right? All types of learning. We know what that term hopefully is. If not, there's a smart slide behind me to tell you what it is. A very easy way to think about synchronous learning is on-site. Face-to-face, that human interaction, that classroom interaction. That's what I love to do. That's what I know a lot of our members love to do. I much prefer to be face-to-face and get that feedback from that perspective. Virtual learning can also be that process though, right? And that's really what that virtual residence piece that we say that, right? So synchronous, that chance to have something in the online space, that feedback as well. So whether we use, like I said, Zoom or Teams or something alike, it still provides it. Here's when the class starts, this is when it ends, this is the date that it's taking place and things like that. Whereas asynchronous, right? So another terminology that we use, think of that as being online. So asynchronous would be your pace, your time, supported by a faculty or an instructor and a team that's going to help you kind of through that process. Make sense?
Yes.
Right, good. Love that. All right. So what the heck is this? What is he showing me up here? A whole bunch of red stars. What I'm showing you is that we've had. Close, but these are actually all the CHU locations where we've had somebody that's engaged in online space. Truth be told, every wing has had somebody that has been in an online cohort or worked in virtual residence. The really cool thing is we have overseas squadrons. We now have the opportunity to engage with our overseas squadrons using virtual residence and also our online cohorts. Even cool for folks that, like me, who kind of balance both worlds of being in the military and being CAP. If I'm deployed or if I go to an overseas unit that doesn't have CAP near me, I can stay engaged. And we've seen CAP members who do that, which is awesome for them, and it keeps them connected to Celestial as well. So again, our reach now is no longer confined to the Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday meeting that takes place at the local airport or the local VFW hall. So why online, right? I'll tell you right now, the guy that runs the program, online's not for everyone, and that's okay. We recognize that. But what I'll tell you though is that not all students can take weekend classes. That's why we envisioned online, right? We knew that was a commitment. Oh, by the way, how many of you in the room are not just X position in your squadron? Right, you're the transportation officer, you might be the ES officer, you might be the personnel officer, right? So time is valuable, so we wanted to provide you an opportunity to be successful that way. And it obviously increases accessibility to our program and it brings equity to the classroom. If I'm in Squadron 123 in X location in the middle of Wyoming, I may not have somebody that's been Celestial for 30 years that knows exactly how to navigate Celestial, but somebody in Utah, because everyone's great in Utah, right, sir? You told me that, right? We're going to tap into instructors in Utah, or you're going to tap into a student with that experience in Utah that's going to finally help those folks up there in Wyoming, right? To kind of help that process through. Is e-learning for everyone? Like I already mentioned, I kind of teased it. No, not necessarily, but there's a lot of folks that it does support and they do enjoy that type of world. What I'll tell you, it's a personal decision of how you decide to engage with volunteer university and educational training. Crazy busy slide. All I want to show you on this slide is really those three blocks up there. I realize I just can't do this and show you because this side I'm going to do. But you have online cohorts, on-site, and virtual residence. I've kind of mentioned it. It's a very similar way to apply to be part of each of those. Again, it's choice. The other big takeaway from this slide is, if you hear nothing else from me today, is you don't have to do anything in just one particular way. Right? If I want to spend some time in virtual residence, I can. If I want to jump back over and spend some time face-to-face, I can. Or if I just want to do something online, I can do that as well. So it gives you flexibility, which is really what our whole program is built around. So just got some rumors. So Volume is not just online. Did anyone miss that message yet? Okay. Students don't need to be in a cohort to take modules. They do not need to do that. Squadron groups, wings, etc. can always plan face-to-face activities, and we have tools and resources. I know your education training officers in the wing and region have access to these tools where we've given them a roadmap to say, hey, if I just want to do this program on a long weekend, you have the way to do it. We do. We built that. We want to do something over a week-long process like Rocky Mountain, help me out, Josh, Rocky Mountain University?
University of Rocky Mountain.
I always couldn't happen, it was dyslexic or something. But you have that opportunity to do it over a 1 week period, right? So we built the curriculum to support that, is the great part of that. So how do you get started? Well, like I mentioned, you have to be a certified volunteer university instructor. One of the other things that we realized early on, I didn't mention this, was, I joined Silver Patrol, and when I joined, somebody said, hey, I need you to go teach CLC. Here's the course material, go teach it. Okay. I don't know what it means to actually be engaging in a classroom and talk to people. Well, that's what our Volume instructor course does. It allows you to help think about, how do I facilitate small group discussion? How do I tap into something that may not be as active in the classroom? How do I help quiet down the one that's always talking, right? All those kind of tips for what we call classroom management. You'll learn about that through our Volume instructor course as well. But it's not just for education training officers. Right, so every presentation I've sat in today so far, you've all made great Volume instructors. I'm just staring at one of you just talked a few minutes ago. Every unit should have, like I said, we think the right thing is 1 to 20, he's looking at his watch and getting ready to tackle him. All right, how can I help members in my squad? He just wants to tackle them. So host a training event, right? Have an opportunity to get engaged, offer 1 or 2 modules, kind of go through that process. The cool thing about our program, you don't have to do it in large group, right? So again, our far-reaching organizations that maybe don't have that great support system, if I have somebody that I can work one-on-one to teach them through level 2, level 3, that's great. That's the way the program is built. Again, max flexibility. So how does that work? Like I said, those Volume approved instructors, ask that you work with your wing education training officer. They've got access to the tools to make that happen. You advertise the event, right? We all know if you don't advertise it, people aren't going to show up. You got to advertise it early. You got to get them excited. You got to provide good resources for them to do that. And register and train your members, validate it with these services. So the cool thing when you're on site and you're learning this, we built a tool where somebody can just simply put in a bunch of CAP ID numbers, they hit approve, and automatically flows to your CAP record. It shows you in real time what else do I need to accomplish to be successful. There is accountability that's out there, so we built instructor guide, student guide, PowerPoint slides for every single module in the program. And guess what? It's not a secret. We've made it available to every single Silver Patrol member, including every cadet in this room. You can go out there and look at the material. It's just out on the Silver Patrol website to do that. So where are they located? I gave you a quick screenshot to kind of find them, but everything's in a zip file that's out there. There's a page for each of the 5 levels in Silver Patrol. It also has, like I said, the link is right there. I give you, again, it's the visual to help you sort of get after that. Same thing with virtual residents. So I'm going to spend just my last couple minutes talking about virtual residents. We've built a website out there, and I put this up there. It's probably hard to read in the back, but we've worked with some great folks at National Headquarters IT, some great folks in the field, and we've built all of our programmatic stuff using Google Calendars. So as a member, if I'm sitting again in the middle of Salt Lake City and I want to find, hey, how do I need this for level 3, for example, guaranteeing of members or compliance requirements, I go out to the calendar, click on it. If there's available space, I register. It sends me a confirmation that I've registered, and I'll send you a reminder of when the class takes place, and what time zone, and all that other good stuff. So again, accessible for you as Silver Patrol members. You don't have to sit and wait for an event potentially to pop up. Local virtual residents, right? So think about that here in Utah. It doesn't just have to be national doing a virtual residence program. The folks here can help facilitate and support that. He is eager to tackle. So ways and regions should plan higher levels, which we've talked about, and how that sort of makes sense. Academic integrity. I'll end. I've got one slide after academic integrity, but all the cadets in the room, if you cheat, what happens? You fail, right? But you learn from those failures, and that's really what our academic integrity policy is all about. is that we provide you an opportunity to do better, to hold each other accountable, to make sure we've got an academic integrity statement as part of Volunteer University, just to make sure that we're validating and we're trusting that the process is there. So it works, is what I'll tell you. That's really what this slide says. So I just presented to the Board of Governors. We just had the Board of Governors meeting, and our numbers, we can't keep up with it, right? So like I said to you, that pesky thing called COVID forced us to really push everything online. We created a little bit of a pressure relief valve with virtual residence, and now that folks are going face-to-face, that's going to really help us continue to roll out Volunteer University. But we've had a lot of folks engage in both virtual residence and online already. So thousands of modules completed with individual user numbers are significant. We project that more people will advance into virtuals level 1 through 5 than in our legacy program because of the accessibility piece. We have more folks who earned the level 5 nationally last year than we have in the last 3 years. Right? Again, accessibility, we've taken away the barrier of forcing the virtual senior members to go on their own dime to Maxwell Air Force Base for 1 week in the middle of summer to take that course in order to earn that credit if they don't have professional military education and things like that. That's as fast as I've ever done this. So,
wow.
But if he was, I was gonna say that. So you're welcome. But hey, what kind of questions you have for me? And, well, I want to respect your lunch. So if please head out to lunch. But I'll be here the rest of the day. I know we're going to do the 2 sessions, educational training sessions. I'll be in those. But also, I'm happy to break bread with you at lunch and talk some more. But he's being telling us.
Hold on. Don't get too fancy. I know I'm holding up for your lunch. But thank you, Col Winter. We are. I want to re-emphasize as much as possible, certainly the senior members in the room. A trained and educated volunteer is an effective volunteer, and an effective volunteer is a happy volunteer, right? It's going to make you happy. You know, as one that graduated from the Legacy program and has watched this program evolve, it's been awesome, right? One thing you do need to do is virtualize a tour to the Tuskegee Airmen, so let's get that on the roster. But one of the advantages that I got being in residence, but you're right, it was a burden. It was an opportunity for me to network and visit with other leaders that I've kept in touch with ever since. But nonetheless, you had the exposure and opportunity for this program to make that work even better. So thank you, Col Winter. Appreciate it. Appreciate you coming all this way. He is the winner of the furthest traveled individual to come to our conference. So, opportunity here, we're going to give you a mug, a couple of things, and take that with you back home.
The sticker's going on that map.
Oh, there we go. Appreciate it. All right.
Oops.
All right. Lunch. He's holding you back. Right?
No, you did.
You go out these doors, you turn
Shag
right,
it
if you
up
have a
like
lunch
back
ticket
all the
in
time.
hand, make sure you turn that in.